Hello and welcome to lesson number 20, some additional literary terms. This will be the final planned lesson. There might be more additional ones in the future, but this will cover basically everything you're going to need to know English Language Arts grades 6 through 12 in the state of Oklahoma, and some beyond there into college level. So the first additional term, this is in addition to what I've already discussed in the other videos. So if we go back through and watch lessons 1 through 19, and then add on this, you should have a pretty full list of vocabulary terms from that if you're writing them down. That'll cover basically anything you're likely going to see on a test. So allegory, A-L-L-E-G-O-R-Y, allegory, is an extended metaphor. So what's that mean? It means that, earlier said like a metaphor is where you say, this thing is this thing. Simile is used like or as. Metaphors, you say, you are the sun. One thing is another thing. An allegory is an extended metaphor. It means you're going beyond just that one singular instance to saying, this thing is a representation or a symbol of something else. So I'll give some examples. Some good allegories. They do not have to reference the Bible or religion. I'm going to bring it up in a little bit in a different word. They often do. They often do have to do something with the Bible or religion or mythology or classical literature, etc. But it's basically you're taking a thing and you're making it a symbol. It symbolizes something else. And so a common allegory is what are known as Christ allegories, where it's basically your character represents Jesus in some extent. So some common ones are Superman in some portrayals of him. The Lion and the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe is a representation of both God and Jesus in that story. He is, for all intents and purposes, the deity of the world of Narnia. Neo in The Matrix. If you haven't seen The Matrix, watch the first movie and don't watch the sequels because they're not any good. This is not an official recommendation or endorsement, sorry. But Neo is a Christ allegory again. Another common one is representations of the other opposite extreme of Lucifer or Satan, where you have this concept of the satanic hero, which comes from Milton's Paradise Lost, where you kind of read it and go like, well, in this portrayal, isn't the devil the good guy? And like God's kind of like an evil tyrant. So you end up with stories where it's the hero or protagonist, especially if like an anti-hero. Rorschach in The Watchmen, V and V for Vendetta, basically anything that Alan Moore ever wrote. It's kind of like superhero stories. You get this character who represents the fallen angel Lucifer or Satan, and they're usually representing the more heroic traits as opposed to being purely evil. They're a complicated character. That's another form of allegory. This character has become a representation of something else. You can, however, also within literature create allegories that do not necessarily have to reference something else. It just exists within that story. If you go, oh, this character sees this random object or animal, and every time that happens, someone dies, they develop a superstition of like, oh, this represents death. That's kind of an allegory almost. Or it can be if it's done poetically within the story. Allusion, not illusion, not like a magician's trick, but allusion, A-L-L-U-S-I-O-N, is again, it's connected to allegory like I was just talking about. It's a reference to the Bible, mythology, or classical literature. So an allusion is you're referring back to something else. You go in the story or a poem or whatever it is, the work of literature. You go, oh, this is like when such and such happened to so and so, or you bring up a symbol or an icon within the story that mirrors something like I'm trying to think of some good examples that are not coming to the top of my head. But basically, okay, like a David and Goliath story. That's kind of what I discussed earlier, an idiom, a saying. It's something we recognize when we hear it. We know what a David and Goliath story is, even without reference to the Bible. But if you were creating characters that kind of directly paralleled that within your story, that like mirrors or repeats a story from the Bible or from mythology or classical literature, it can be also. And you go like, okay, this character represents this character from this story, and this character represents this other character from this story. You're referring back to something that's older and that's more well known. That's an allusion. Okay? You're alluding. alluding. That's a word that'll get you bonus points on your papers in college and in high school. If you're like so-and-so, the author is clearly alluding to blah, 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 when he or she writes blah, blah, blah. A+. Okay? Now, here's a couple that you will probably never get around to covering in middle school or high school. Those other two you will. Allegory and illusion. Those will come up. These other ideals will come up in college. You most likely won't hear them before then. Verisimilitude. VERISIMIL. That's a lot of I's. ITUDE. Verisimilitude. What in the world does that mean? It means it approximates real life. And this is a concept in writing, it's what you're supposed to attempt to achieve. You do not want to write down exactly how people sound when they speak, because if you did that, it'd be weird and boring and hard to follow, because you have a lot of, no, I do that a lot. It's a bad habit. You're not supposed to when you're speaking, but it's natural. You have long pauses and interruptions and half thoughts and sentences and so on and so forth. You don't want to do that. You want to approximate how speech and conversation sound. You want to approximate how does the world look. You don't want to show it exactly as it is. You want to show the details and important features that matter to our story and our characters. That creates a sense of verisimilitude. It approximates real life without showing it exactly as it is. It's just similar enough that we recognize it as being realistic, yet still existing within a story. I hope that makes sense. The other idea or concept I want to get to is objective correlative. Those are two words. What in the world does that mean? It's a really hard idea and concept to get, and it's even harder to write. If you take a college-level writing course, they'll most likely try to get you to create the objective correlative at some point, and basically everyone fails. So if you go look up the definition on Wikipedia, it makes no sense. It's kind of long and rambling. The way that I was explaining it, the way I'm going to explain it to you, is that it's you take an object within the story, a physical object, something you can see, you can touch, you can feel, like something real and tangible. You take this object and you assign meaning or value to it, usually emotionally charged, through correlation, which is where the correlative comes from. You go, I'll give you some examples. So the story that we read in college was some Hemingway story that I don't even remember. I half remember, but he takes like a plate of scrambled eggs, and that's the object. And the guy's mad at the scrambled eggs for some reason, but he's not actually mad at the scrambled eggs. He's mad at something else. So that becomes the symbol in the story, because it comes up again later. There's the other part of the objective correlative is you have to refer back to it So you go earlier, okay, here's this thing, and now it represents this, and now later we're going to bring it back again and say, okay, here's this thing, now you're supposed to think or feel that emotion that we brought up earlier. Does that make sense? So another example is I was reading a book where author actually managed to do it well, was she brought up a character remembered in childhood going down to peek at the Christmas presents and seeing the Christmas tree and suddenly feeling sad looking at it. And then later on in the story, she said she was standing alone and she felt like a Christmas tree. So it's like you take something that's common and it might already have symbols or meanings within itself, but you give it a new meaning within the context of the story, and then you refer back to that later. That's the objective correlative. So that one, like I said, you won't study that probably until you get to college, as well as verisimilitude. If you have those words in your vocabulary, you're gonna do well on your essays when you recognize them in stories. When you're reading a story and you go, oh, they did this, and you write down the author used blah blah verisimilitude or objective correlative well, or did not do it well. They misstepped. That'll be really impressive to your professors if you can manage to explain what you're talking about there. All right, so that's it. I hope you got something out of these videos. I might come back and do some more later in the future, but basically I just covered every required topic that you're going to cover in middle school and high school in the state of Oklahoma for English language arts, and like I said, a little bit further into your college level materials.